What is up, maniacs? I am Zach, and I am the Milly Maker Maniac. Welcome to our Week 5 Player Pool Breakdown. I'm going to take you through who my core plays are, people that are going to be a part of my player pool this week, and that are going to lead us to that $1 million prize in Week 5. I am super hyped about this slate. I feel like I have a really good handle on it. Going to be very aggressive this week. It just feels like there's some really good spots. In previous weeks, we've really been kind of trying to find those good matchup spots, but it's been a lot of like mediocre offenses against bad defenses. But this week we have multiple situations with bad defenses against elite offenses, and I think it's going to be quite a shootout week. And I think we have a really good feel for this slate. Our player pool is very concentrated this week compared to previous weeks. Hopefully that doesn't bite us in the ass, but we will find out. If I'm correct on my thesis of the top 4 offenses this week being the Lions, the Chargers, the Cowboys, and the Colts, it's going to be a very profitable week. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. And if you haven't watched the game-by-game breakdown, that video is up as well, where I take you through my spreadsheet, where I take their grades against each other and look for matchup advantages, which helps me get to this player pool that we've worked on today. So let's jump right into quarterback. My top 4 guys that I'll be building 15 lineups each with. And when we're looking at this is when I'm talking about the number of lineups and how much I'm playing these guys, I'm talking about tournaments, talking about trying to win the Milly Maker. So I'm going to have a spread of players that I'm going to be playing. I'm not just going to be keying on to 1 or 2 guys. You'll hear lots of people when they're talking about DFS about building in smaller field tournaments and building out like 4 or 5 lineups. That's not what I'm doing. I do get involved in those tournaments. Those tournaments are easier to make solid money in, but we are called the Milly Maker Maniac for a reason. We were trying to win that Milly Maker. So in order to do that, we do need to spread out our options. We need to try to create some unique builds. The thing about the NFL, even though we're here trying to predict Week 5, it's an unpredictable sport. We can get some edges, but we need to mix in some elements of not quite being right. We're going to have our core thesis that we're working off of, but we're going to have some variations to that thesis. I'm not going to get tied into just one player. For instance, I'm very high on the Lions this week. As you see, I got Jared Goff here as one of my core plays, but I have Lions in every single core play across every position because they have multiple very talented players. I think that's one of the reasons why the simulators aren't putting that many Lions into their, like not enough Lions in my mind, into their lineups, because those touches, the potential boom games is spread across 5 really solid players, 6 really, if we throw Montgomery into there. But I am very, very confident that there are 2, maybe 3, maybe even 4, but very confident that at the end of the week, we're going to see 2 Lions that are top 5 at their position this week at a minimum. I think that there's upside from that. So I'm not trying to go into the week and say it's just JMO, or it's just Jared Goff, or it's just Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think it's 2 of those 6 players, 3 of those 6 players maybe. So I'm going to build different combinations based off of that thesis. So here at quarterback, we got Goff playing against Cincinnati. We love that. Cincinnati is like, they're an awful defense. They got nothing going on offense right now. The Lions don't care about slowing the game down in the second half. They're just going to run up points. This reminds me a lot of the spot last year where they played the Jaguars and they won 52-3. Like, that's the kind of vibe I'm getting for this game. So I'm going to build as much Lions stacks, both with Goff and without Goff. I will have at least one Lion in every single lineup this week, but that starts with Jared Goff. He's also going to be pretty low owned based on a lot of the projections so far, which I find very interesting. When Goff goes off, he generally brings people along with him. We can look back, if we go to 2024, look at some of Jared Goff's bigger weeks. This is one where he didn't really bring anybody along with him. QB6 isn't what we're looking for. We're looking for QB2. Here's a good one. Jared Goff is QB2 with 41 points. This is that Bills game, and he brings 3 guys along with him in the top 5 at their position. And that's the type of week we're looking for with Goff. Here's the following week. Again, brings 3 guys that are top 7 at their position, 1 guy that's top 5 at his position, and JMO this week. When Goff goes off, he brings people with him. So we are going to build scenarios in which that is how it plays out. It worked out really well for us in week 2 when we had a $16,000 profit, hoping that happens again in week 5. Herbert plays the Commanders this week. I absolutely love playing the Commanders. They have the lowest pass grade on coverage grade on PFF. Yes, they are missing 2 of their biggest pieces on the offensive line, and they just lost Joe Alt last week. And they did have problems with the Giants' pass rush last week, but that happened. Joe Alt injury happened earlier in the game, so it was harder for them to make an adjustment in game. And I think the Giants' pass rush is much, much better than the Commanders' pass rush. The Commanders have a decent pass rush, but not one as good as the Giants, in my mind. So I think that they'll be able to handle that pressure a little bit better than they were last week. But the secondary just cannot cover these receivers. When we get to receivers, you will see that all 3 Chargers receivers are in my core plays. Dak Prescott playing the really bad Jets defense. I know we didn't think that coming into the year, but this year the Jets defense is awful. They are not good. Doesn't matter, though, for the Cowboys. They have played good defenses, and they have put up big numbers. Last week being a great example where they put up 40 points against the Packers, who many would say is the best defense in the league. And this week, I think, is going to be an absolute just display by Dak Prescott. And I think their best matchup of the year, besides maybe I think it's better than the Giants. They had that big game against the Giants, but this is their best matchup of the year. I think Dak is going to go off, and really we can concentrate that down to Pickens and Ferguson. We can throw in a little Turpin and a little bit of Tolbert in some of those 15 lineups, maybe 2 or 3 of each of those guys out of those 15 lineups. But I see everybody. The field is on Justin Fields. That makes sense because the Cowboys' defense is awful. The Cowboys are the 2024 Bengals in that they have a really good offense and an awful defense, so it leads to a lot of shootouts, which is great for fantasy football. Everybody's on the Justin Fields side. I will obviously be building some of that, but I think that Dak's actually has a better chance of outscoring Fields. So that's how I'm going to be playing it this week. And I think it's pretty concentrated volume. We can mix in some Javonte into some of those stacks as well. We'll look at that here in a second as well. And then we got Daniel Jones playing the Raiders. It's crazy to think that Daniel Jones would be a core play coming into the year, but that offense is good. They're just good. Like, we have to adjust our preseason thoughts, what we had coming into the season. The Colts are one of the top 5 offenses in the league. They have a great matchup against the Raiders this week, who have just been an absolute pass funnel. I think this is a week where Jones, scores 25 plus fantasy points and isn't going to be that highly owned. Both, really, besides Herbert, these other 3 core guys with Goff, Prescott, and Jones are going to give us leverage on the field. If you watch any of my other videos, you know that I don't really care what the ownership percentages are. The key to building a Milly Maker lineup that is going to take down the Milly is to have the players that score the most points in it. It does not matter what their ownership percentage is. That being said, I understand why you want to have an understanding of those ownership percentages, because if somebody is highly owned and they do not go off, you get a lot of leverage on the field by not playing that person. But on the flip side, if that person goes off and you had to have them and they're at a high ownership percentage, then you're just dead if you were just trying to play leverage. So I'm not really trying to play that game. I'm just trying to build lineups based on my thesis of that week. What do I think is the most likely outcome? Who are the people that I think are most likely to be top 5 at their position? That's what we're trying to do, is stack as many top 5 guys at their position for the main slate in our lineup. If we get top 5 guys at every position across the board, we have a legit shot at winning the Milly Maker, regardless of their ownership percentage. So don't let that really dictate how you are building your lineups. Build your lineups to give you the best shot to score the most points. That's the focus. I'm going to build 8 lineups with Kyler Murray and Justin Fields. Kyler plays the Titans. He's had some good matchups throughout the year, but really hasn't gone off yet. But I think what's different about this week is they're down to their 3rd and 4th string running backs with Trey Benson going on to IR. It's also easy to build stacks with Kyler because it's basically just McBride and Harrison. You can do single stacks or double stacks with those guys. And I think he's going to have to carry this team a little bit more this week without the run game. So this is a week where I think Kyler can go off. They're also at home. Kyler's big games tend to be at home. So I like this spot. I'm going to build a lot more Kyler lineups than I would normally build. This just feels like a week that he could go off. And one of the things that it would be unique too, if I have a Kyler lineup, I think it's going to Fields is going to be very highly owned. Herbert's going to be very highly owned. If Murray does go off, it's going to give me a little bit of leverage on the field where I'm still going to be building around the Colts, the Chargers, the Lions, and the Cowboys. Those are still going to be my core plays, but then I'll have the Cardinals in there as well. And if they hit their ceiling in these 8 lineups, then I'm going to have a lot of good shots at having the right combinations of those other 4 offenses that I think are going to have a lot of guys that are in the top 5 this week. That's kind of my philosophy with these other lineups is I believe that the Chargers, Lions, Colts, and Cowboys are going to be the offenses that you need to be targeting this week, the offenses that are going to have the most guys come out of there with top 5 and hopefully top 1 guys at their position this week. But if, say, these 6 quarterbacks, none of them are QB1, I'm still giving myself a shot at these guys having that QB1 outcome. But then my other thesis of those offenses going off is still true. Then I have other shots at taking down the Milly. Even though I don't think that these guys are the ones that are going to be QB1 this week, I think these 6 guys give me the best shot at being QB1 this week. We can't predict the NFL, especially at the quarterback position. Matthew Stafford was QB1 last week for the main slate, and he was only 2% owned. Well, obviously, not a lot of people saw that coming. So I'm not going to pretend like I am able to predict the future. I'm going to give myself shots at things that I think are lower outcome. And those are those situations where I do get leverage on the field too, where I'm going after things that I don't necessarily think are as likely to happen as these other things to occur. Another thing that can happen too is these matchups for these 4 guys are really, really solid. But what can happen in those scenarios, these guys could all throw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. If they don't get to that 303, that's kind of like the baseline for having a shot at the Milly Maker. If they throw for 302, what is a really good chance of happening in that scenario is the running back scored 1 or 2 touchdowns. When a quarterback has a good matchup and the offense is moving the ball, that's good for all the players on offense when they're getting a lot of yards and they're getting into scoring position and scoring a lot. That doesn't always mean from a fantasy standpoint that quarterback is going to be QB1. Sometimes, say Jared Goff throws for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, there's a really good chance that either Amon-Ra or J-Mo is still a top 5 wide receiver, but probably Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery is also a top 5 running back because they probably got 1 or 2 touchdowns out of that scenario. I'm very confident that the Lions score 4+ touchdowns this week. How that is distributed, we don't know, right? When they get down to the 5-yard line, they might run it in, they might throw it in. We don't, that's the element of DFS that's hard to predict. So we're predicting that they're going to have a good week, but I'm not trying to be Nostradamus and go back to the future with the almanac and know exactly what's going to happen. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I do think that these offenses are going to have success, and I hope that 2 or 3 of these guys, hopefully all 4, have that 300-yard and 3+ touchdown day. But if they all have successful days, and my other lineups, we're going to have those other pieces that aren't going to be connected to our quarterback, because I believe these offenses are the offenses that are going to have the most success this week. So that's why we're going to build these other lineups, even though I don't think it's as likely. We're still going to give ourselves shots at winning that Milly Maker, even if our core group of 6 aren't QB1. Now, so I like Jaden Daniels. They play the Chargers. I obviously think the Chargers are going to score a lot of points. Jaden Daniels is very capable of keeping their team in the game. I think that the Chargers are the better team, but Jaden Daniels is a very competent quarterback. He definitely can lead fourth quarter comebacks. Obviously, we all believe that. He's the highest priced QB that's going to play this week. Lamar is likely out at 7,300, so Jaden at 7,000 is the next highest. I want to build 5 lineups. I want to build that scenario in which it's a shootout game with the Chargers. With Jaden Daniels, I'll primarily be stacking him with Debo and Ertz. If McLaurin plays, I will mix him in a little bit as well. Tua plays the Panthers. I don't really believe in that passing game, especially with Tyreek Hill out. I think Achane is really where the focus needs to be this week from a DFS standpoint. But that being said, if Tua is QB1 this week, which is a possibility, they're playing the Panthers. It's not like they're playing a juggernaut offense. And I also kind of feel like both of those coaches are coaching for their job. Whoever wins that game buys themselves some more time. The loser might be gone after this week, in all reality. So I think that they're going to pull out all the stops, and there is a scenario in which the Dolphins score a ton of points against the Panthers. That's not out of the realm of possibilities. He's easy to stack because the keys, you're basically Achane and Waddle. You can throw a little Malik Washington in there, maybe some Waller, but you know where the volume's going to go. You can double stack him or just single stack him with Achane or with Waddle. Bryce Young, same thing. We're not worried about the Dolphins' defense. This is kind of where we were at last week. Like, this game, to me, is the Bears and the Raiders game last week, where the offenses had really big matchup advantages because they were playing really bad defenses, but they were just mediocre offenses. That's kind of what we saw last week. So we made that bet on those mediocre offenses against bad defenses, but they ended up being mediocre. That is, I think, the more likely outcome in this Miami and Panthers game, but there are outcomes where that could turn into a shootout. So I'm going to play a few scenarios where that plays out. Sam Darnold plays the Buccaneers this week. There's going to be a lot of weeks where Darnold's actually going to be in my core plays. This week, the Buccaneers defense has actually been pretty solid against the pass. They have a good run defense as well. That being said, Sam Darnold's had the highest grade on PFF this year, highest passing grade, and he's just been balling out. So because of that, I'm going to play him every single week, and he's easy to stack. Get him with JSN. We can mix in a little Torrey Horton, maybe a little Cooper Kupp, but you don't really have to go far. Like, you know where the targets are going. It's JSN and then maybe one other guy. So primarily, I'll probably play 3 or 4 of these as just skinny stacks. Yeah, probably 3 of them, and then 2 of them I'll probably mix in Horton. I don't think I'm going to get to Kupp this week, but then over here, Jalen Hurts, I don't believe in this week against the Broncos, but he is a guy that can always score multiple touchdowns with the tush push. He could always randomly be QB1 because of that. They play the Broncos this week, not a great matchup, but I will get a couple lineups in just because he can score points every single week. Baker Mayfield, I love as well, but this is just going to be a tough week. Seahawks defense is very good. Their O-line is banged up. He's missing weapons. It's pretty much just him and Igbuka. It's likely that Irving is going to be out, currently on crutches. Not a good sign if you're going to play on Sunday. So I just don't think it's a Baker week. We'll build a couple lineups just in case. Bo Nix randomly puts up fantasy points even when he doesn't play, so because of that, will play well, but because of that, we will build a couple lineups with him. Geno's been hot and cold this year. They're going to have to score a lot of points against the Colts if they want to be in that game. So I think there are a few scenarios where maybe he does bring them back, but I don't think it's extremely likely. Dart, I just don't really see him being a top 5 QB. He does run a decent amount, so it could happen. He's exciting for the Giants, but I just don't see it being... I don't see it being more than exciting. I don't see it being something that wins you the Milly Maker. But I'll still build a couple just in case, especially without Neighbors. It's hard for me to see him getting to QB1 or even QB5. Stroud, I don't believe in him that much because of their O-line, but I'll build a couple CJ to Nico lineups. They are playing the Ravens, which is actually one of the worst defenses and have given up the most fantasy points of any defense on the slate. But I think this is one of those examples of just bad on bad. So there is an outcome where, he binks one and has that 303 week, but he hasn't had really any top 5 weeks over the last year and a half. We'll build a little bit. We'll build 2 just in case, but I don't believe in it. This is one where I'm going against what I believe. Jake Browning, same thing. I think the most likely outcome is the Lions win something like 35-0. Their pass rush is phenomenal this year with Hutchinson being back. There's the Bengals offensive line is atrocious. Obviously, they do have incredible weapons with Higgins and Chase, but Browning just hasn't shown the ability to get the ball to them. We'll build a couple lineups with the philosophy that maybe he does figure it out, but I doubt it. So, again, these are ones that I don't believe in, but I'll build a couple just in case. And then I'm not going to play Rattler or Cam Ward. Mariota isn't playing this week, so we don't have to worry about that. And if Lamar plays, I would put him in this 1 to 2 category as well. He's not going to be a core play for me this week against Houston. All right, let's move on to running back. A lot more concentrated than in previous weeks. I think the popular plays are going to be Jonathan Taylor and Devon Achane. Maybe some Breece Hall in that popular play as well. Javonte was kind of middle of the pack as well. It's crazy to me that Gibbs isn't the most popular guy, though. Like, Gibbs is a guy that I'm going to try to get in roughly 50% of my lineups. Gibbs against the Bengals. What are we talking about? Like, he could only, even if he only had 10 touches, I see Gibbs being a top 5 player this week against that defense. So give me all the Gibbs. Give me all the Gibbs I can get. I will try to build as many lineups with these 3 guys together as I can. And then I think there's some good values down here too. Javonte, I think they're going to move the ball pretty well against the Jets. That offense is just good. And in the red zone, they seem to have been giving the ball a decent amount. He's caught the ball out of the backfield a little bit as well. So he's had plenty of top 5 weeks since the season started. Let's go over here and look at Javonte, actually. Just want to see. Yeah, 25. I mean, he's been around 20 3 out of 4 weeks. So we'll take that all day at 6,200. That can give us a shot at the Milly Maker for sure. Cam Scatterboo, I think they're basically just going to feed him the rock. I could see him getting around 25 carries this week against one of the worst run defenses in the league in New Orleans. Yeah, I think he's going to be a workhorse, and I think he's really good. I think that game's going to be kind of ugly, but Scatterboo, I think, is going to lead them to a victory. He's the guy on the Giants that I'm interested in this week. Breece Hall's bit me in the ass a couple times this year, but I think this week without Braylon Allen there, he's going to get more volume. It's against one of the worst defenses in the league in the Cowboys. He's just too good of a player at 5,600 to not be one of my core plays. And then Woody Marks, I don't love the 5,400. I wish he was a little cheaper, but the Ravens have one of the worst run defenses in the league right now. They are completely just decimated with injuries on defense. Like, I have to have Woody Marks in there around 25%. And that's going to be way above the field, but it just makes sense to me. Like, I know their O-line is bad, but that D-line is just as bad, if not, or actually worse. When we look at the matchup grades, let's go over here. Look at this advantage right here for Houston. That's the biggest advantage. They have the highest running back score in my system this week. So he's cheap. He's got a great matchup. I think they're going to rely on him quite a bit. I think it's going to be a pretty ugly game. I think it's pretty much just going to be Derrick Henry versus Woody Marks and see how that plays out. We would assume that Derrick Henry would come out on top on that, but that Ravens defense is just awful so far this year. So we will play plenty of Woody Marks. These are guys that I like, but I'm not going to get a ton of. Henry, I just think he's going to get all the volume this week, and he can always break one. They need to rely on him. They need to try to keep the game a little bit slower, I think, if they try to get into a pass-happy scenario against that pass rush with the beat-up offensive line. I think Cooper Rush is just going to get dominated. They need to establish the run. I think that's their only shot to win this game. And I think the coaches are going to agree with that philosophy and just feed him the rock and hope that he can carry him to a victory. Ginty, this matchup is horrible for Ginty. Their offensive line is horrific, and with their left tackle going out, it's even worse. He's really the only offensive lineman for the Raiders that's any good, and all of his big runs were behind him last week. But that being said, Ginty is an absolute freak, and any single week he can bust one or two massive runs. So because of that, I'm going to mix him in a little bit. He'll be closer to that 5% for me than that 15%, but I want to mix him in a little bit. This very well could be a David Montgomery game. Again, I'm really high on Gibbs, but I could see Montgomery getting 15 or so touches, 100 yards, and 2 TDs. Like, that's a scenario that could play out against this Bengals defense. They are trash. So we're going to mix in both of these guys. I'll probably build one or two lineups with them together. There was a couple times last year where that would have played out fine. I think the week when they played the, let's see, what week was that? Week 10, I think. Yeah. So they were both top 10. This is the week they played the Jags in week 11. So that was a week they're both top 10. So it can work, but I don't want to do a lot of that. I think it's low likelihood of that happening. It's probably one or the other. So probably somewhere around 5% Montgomery. And then it's sounding like Chuba's not going to play. If Chuba doesn't play, Rico Dowdle at 4,300 against the Dolphins, just too good of a value to fade. So I'd probably be somewhere around 10% at that value. The one that I'm most scared of this week as far as guys I'm fading is Saquon. The matchup looks bad, but Saquon can bust one every single week. I'm pretty scared of it, but I feel pretty confident in these guys. So I'm just going to go full fade, trust my gut, and hope I don't get burned. At 7,500, he's got to have a pretty big week to just absolutely kill me. If he's RB1, but only by like 1 or 2 points, and maybe it's Scatterboo and Breece Hall are both within 2 points of him, then that's a fade that's not going to kill me or hurt me really. But if he scores like 10 points more than anybody else, especially these lower end price guys, then I'm hosed. So that's definitely a possibility. That's really my like biggest fear of this week is that Saquon buries me. I don't think it's likely, but it could happen. So gonna clench my teeth and hope we make it through without him burning us this week. We shall see though. All right, wide receiver is pretty simple for me. We play Lions with Amon-Ra and J-Mo. Pretty much going to try to have one of those guys in every single lineup. JSN is a stud. He's underpriced. We want to get after it with JSN. George Pickens is the dude right now without Lamb there. The Jets play man at the 8th highest rate, and George Pickens dominates against man, even though it's Sauce Gardner. I love Pickens here. He just dominates against man. Dak is going to find him. Garrett Wilson playing the Cowboys here. He is like the only dude that they're going to throw to, and this defense is just awful. So I like Garrett Wilson, especially at 6,100. And then we have all three of the Chargers receivers. I am very confident that at least one of these guys and maybe two of these guys are going to be top 5 this week. I kind of have an inclination that it's going to be Ladd. I think it's could be Ladd's coming out party, but I'm pretty much going to split between these three pretty evenly, right around. I'm going to have one of these guys in pretty much every single lineup, but I'm going to have it pretty evenly distributed. And then Michael Pittman, just think the Colts are going to dominate this week. He is their go-to guy. So we will have him in a lot of lineups as well. Other guys that I want to mix in, Nico and Waddle are going to be heavily owned. I could see both of them having solid weeks. Nico at 6,800 is very attractive. Most of the time he's in the mid-7s or higher. So I'm going to mix that in a little bit more this week than I normally do. But these other guys, good matchups with high target volume. This is where I'm going. Punt plays. So I never really want to have any punt plays more than 10%. I really want to shoot for less than 5% on any punt plays. But when I get down and I'm in a scenario where I have to punt, these are the guys that I'm going to mix in. 2 Cowboys here. Torrey Horton is way underpriced at 3,600. Malik Washington with a much larger role now with Tyreek out. I think they're going to probably scheme up some stuff for him. He's definitely a guy that can break one. Josh Downs hasn't done anything yet this year, but I like his skill set, his ability, and he is a guy that could randomly go off, especially in a good matchup here. So we'll mix him in as well. And then Slayton at 4,300, he's the punt play off of the Giants that I would be interested in with Neighbors out. And Pierce also a Colt, obviously. He's the guy that I think could put up a bigger number, even more so than Downs, just because he gets more downfield stuff. I am fading some big names this week in Jamar and Egbuka and Flowers and Brown, Sutton. Like, I'm only going to play these guys in stacks. It's kind of a weird week. Kind of crazy to say that I'm fading Jamar Chase completely, but that's what I'm going to do. That's how we're going to play it this week. Tight end, pretty simple for me this week. I'm going to play Jake Ferguson and Tyler Warren anytime, pretty much anytime that I am not just adding a tight end to a stack. McBride's probably going to be the highest owned guy. That makes sense a little bit to me. I'll mix him in here and there, but primarily only in my Kyler stacks. Laporta, obviously, I think that he is going to has a chance to score a touchdown or two with that team just going off. Because of that, we'll mix him as well outside of some of our Goff stacks, but primarily just in Goff stacks. And then our cheap guy, Ertz, he's just, especially with Jaden Daniels in, he's like the go-to guy for Jaden. So 3,800, that's a good value. Mason Taylor, in that pass funnel against the Cowboys, he's really turning into the second option behind Wilson at 2,800. That's definitely intriguing. And Gadsden, he mixed in a little bit the last few weeks as well, 2,700. I'll mix him in a little bit, but not much outside of my Herbert stacks. Defense, we got really going to be locked in on the Lions, Colts, Giants, and Texans. Great pass rushes against bad offenses. I'm in on that. We'll mix in a little bit of the Eagles and Seahawks. I'm going to try to get to the Lions as much as possible. Like, the Cardinals are intriguing against the Titans, but I want the Lions a lot more against the Bengals at 3,500. So I'm going to try to get to them as much as possible. All right, my friends, let's build one lineup here real quick. We're gonna do a Lions stack. We'll also get the Chargers in there. There's Detroit. We'll go ahead and just pull up our 4 key offenses. We'll get the Jets in there too. All right, so we're gonna go Goff, Gibbs. Let's go down here and we will get Breece Hall to give us a little bit of salary. We're going to go Amon-Ra on this one. We don't want to go Wilson and Hall in this one. I will build that stack a little bit. We'll go McConkey. Screw it. Let's go double stack. Give me J-Mo for a big day. And a tight end. We're going to have to go, we'll go Warren here. Let's get our defense in there. We will go down here to Houston against Baltimore. Leaves us 4,800. What do we got at 4,800? All right, we'll go double tight end here. There's the $1 million lineup, my friends. Goff triple stack with Gibbs, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Jameson Williams. We've got our Charger receiver in there. We've got Breece Hall against the Cowboys stacked with Ferguson in that game stack. We got our Colt in there with Tyler Warren. We are good to go. And the Texans D playing a very injured Baltimore offense. There it is, my friends. Good luck this week in week 5. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Appreciate y'all watching. We'll see you next week. Good luck.